Hi, welcome to Just a Little Mom podcast. This is your host, Daphne Boyd, and today I am with Meghan DeVito. Meghan is a life coach, and she's also a member of our homeschool moms in business group on Facebook. And so Meghan is going to be talking to us today about boundaries and how we can set boundaries in our home, in our family, in our business, and even in our homeschool. And so I'm going to let Meghan have the floor, and then we will have some discussion afterwards. Welcome,
Hi, Daphne.
Meghan.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm so glad to be here. I'm grateful for the opportunity, and I see what you're doing in the homeschool community. So it's very, very appreciated. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So I love the topic of boundaries, and the reason why I do love the topic of boundaries is something that, because I didn't grow up with any, right? Like we don't grow up with boundaries. We learn how to build them. And if you think of a toddler beginning to walk, right, they push all the boundaries in that they can. And that's how I felt growing up. And then getting into business and then homeschooling, it was that, the Lord really showed me that how important boundaries were. So I didn't burn out continually. Like I always was on a hustle mode, and I wanted to prevent that burnout. Not only did I want to prevent it, I didn't know that I needed to prevent it until I completely burned out in business. So here I am today talking about boundaries. So I would love to, know what kind of questions that you would have for me. And so I could talk to the audience in particular.
So share your story. You mentioned earlier when we were talking before about what how the Lord kind of directed you when COVID shut down, and how He sort of led you to this. So talk to us about that.
Yeah. So before COVID happened, I remember I was in a very successful online based business. I was in a multi-level marketing company, and I respect that business structure for people who do make an income that way. For me, I was in that for about 5 to 6 years, and I was running a nonstop marathon. That was something I chose, right? I chose to chase the income. I chose to chase the freedom, the time freedom that I thought I was creating for my family, but I became addicted to work. And addicted to producing and, seeing the zeros and the paycheck every month. And right before COVID happened, I remember I was I vividly remember this. I was standing in my living room, and my husband and I had a lot of disagreements about me working too much, right? And it was almost the common argument in our household. And I remember something happened, and I was hugging him, and I just shattered. I just broke down, and I said, I can't do this anymore. And it was almost like breaking down if you have an addiction and you need help, right? It was like that cry. I was like, okay, I'm calling myself out. And I actually had to make an amends to him. And I had to say, eventually, I'm sorry. I thought I was providing for our family, and I was putting work above. So the Lord shut me down, and He said to me clearly, my alignment is out of whack. I thought success and work was top priority. And then He showed me that I wasn't putting the Lord first. I wasn't putting my spouse first. And ultimately, I thought what I was doing, everything was for my kids, but they were hurting in it as well. I was blinded, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Totally. So your husband had a problem with you working, and I feel like a lot of families, especially like homeschool moms that are in business, and they have taken on so much on themselves, right? So much responsibility and so many like day-to-day tasks. Yeah. And then when they have something outside the home that they feel like, it makes them feel good, right? Because nobody applauds you. There's no reward for doing laundry or, any of those like what we consider mundane household tasks, right? But then when you're outside the home in any capacity, and you're making
Yeah.
money, or, you're earning, rewards or accolades, or just even a pat on the
Yeah.
back, like, wow, she did it this month or whatever. We become addicted to that. Right. And so then you're saying that your husband, sort of noticed, like, hey, not as much attention is being put on the family. So walk us through what happened during COVID. So your business shut down, and then the Lord sort of started to reveal some things to you.
Yeah.
And how did you start to create those boundaries?
Yep.
And actually just navigate us, like, through your journey of how you switched gears and started doing something different.
Yeah, it would be my pleasure. So I was sitting one morning, probably after I had my kind of meltdown, breakdown, and the Lord, it was so clear. And he said to me, you already coach women. Now you serve them one-on-one, and you do it well. And I was like, I jumped out of my chair, ran to the bathroom where my husband was shaving. And I was like, I just heard it. I know what I'm supposed to be doing, because I was in a really high ranking leadership role previously in my business. Right. Yeah. But I wasn't showing, I wasn't showing up serving, and I love to serve, but I'm serving for the Lord. And the Lord clearly said to me, coach one-on-one. You have a story, you have experience, and other people will benefit from it, and give them strength. And that's all so now I was like, okay, I need to shift gears. And I invited the Lord into our work. And what I started doing, Daphne, is even when I was still with the, network marketing company, I still then started the Lord started transitioning to me into honoring a Sabbath, right? And that was something, like, we would get out of service on a Sunday morning, and I would have to go home and work. And no one told me I had to work. It was this obligation. And then I was convicted. I was like, if I want to cheat on my husband or kill somebody, why am I not honoring one of the 10 commandments of honoring the holy day, the Sabbath, right? Wow. So we started, and I was convicted, and I was like, oh my gosh. And so what I did was I had a coach. I believe coaches need coaches. I believe in counseling. I believe in all of that, right? So I had a business coach telling me, hey, you're doing this all wrong. And I fought it tooth and nail. And she said, start honoring a Sabbath. And I listened, and I wanted to be a student, right? I wanted to say, how can I feel better? So I started honoring a Sabbath, and I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to tell my family I'm doing this right now. I'm just going to put my phone down and not pick it up, because I didn't want to hear, you can't, we'll see. Or no, the phone is more important, right? So I started implementing a 24-hour technology device unplug. And then we started honoring the Sabbath. And now it's something that my family, we do it every Saturday evening to Sunday evening, 24 hours. We unplug as a family. We worship as a family. We don't work, we're not focused on building our portfolio and our client base. And I realized the Lord shook me so hard, Daphne, and it was people over profit. And I was like, I was doing it all wrong. It's not profit then people, it's people over profit. And then, so he shut my business down, and I was, and there was so much fear. And I hope I'm speaking to those moms out there that are in this situation and go, I can't leave that because I can't make that money. God will always provide once you're obedient, right? Like, God knows. And I was so fearful of leaving this thing, this identity of this being in this business that I wasn't aligned with anymore, because I wanted to honor the Sabbath. I wanted business boundaries. I didn't want to answer my phone at dinner. All of those things that I was kind of felt forced to do to be available all the time and on, that wasn't working for my family. So I started reeling back and serving women one-on-one and putting boundaries in place. And then COVID happened, and we were like, okay, we were not a homeschooling family. My husband for years had said to me, I wish we would homeschool. And I'm like, I'm not equipped for that. I can't do that. I have to work, and all this. And then the Lord was like, nope. And our kids made that decision. We have we have a 15-year-old, almost 16, and a 14-year-old. And they were like, no, Mom, we're ready to do this. And that has given me such joy in our family, to have those boundaries in place where we homeschool and we have, meetups on Fridays, or have this freedom. And my son, just to let, I don't share this too much, but in a homeschooling community, if you went from a public school setting to homeschool, my son for years suffered from anxiety and stress. And I thought it was the academic pressure that he put on himself. It was just the pressure of being in that setting. And for me, to see what the Lord has done and to remove that anxiety from the sweet boy who has a beautiful heart and walks with the Lord, and to remove that. And I was like, okay, so God just keeps validating those decisions. But it all started back when I had that breakdown, and when I was like so burnt out that I was like, okay, Lord, what is it that you want me to do? Right. And it was the first time, I think, in my life that I was still enough and quiet enough to actually hear. And I was patient enough to be guided, because I always thought I had to fix everything. I had to control it. Right. I had to go do this and stuff. And I was like, I was doing it all wrong. So.
Okay. So then you started homeschooling fairly recently, and you started with teens. And
yes,
so that's a little different story than a lot of homeschool moms who start somewhere in the primary or elementary stages. Tell us a little bit about that, and then how you transitioned. So now the Lord's dealing with you about all these business boundaries and time boundaries.
Yeah.
How did you jump into homeschooling, which for a lot of us is like overwhelming, right? Or it can be overwhelming, and you jumped in with the Lord already leading you about drawing some boundaries. So how do you, because time management is a big deal for a lot of homeschool moms. Tell us how you drew those boundaries with your homeschool, with your kids, and in your homeschooling, within the home, and you're running a business, because that is like a big one.
Yeah, I realized before I started homeschooling, the Lord showed me that my time is my greatest asset, right? Like, it's the most valuable thing that you could give to somebody is your time. Right. So after the burnout that I experienced and realized I was in hustle mode for so long, I wanted to make my time a gift to my children, right? Like, I wanted to say, whatever it is that we need to do to cultivate a homeschool community, whatever we need to do that you're academically challenged or extracurricular, like the activities, whatever you do. So we stepped back, and I probably work like 20 hours a week, and the Lord provides. And we have where Fridays are our time to go to meetups. And now last year looked a little bit different. My daughter is more in a co-op setting. She wants to be in person, right? So she's in more of a co-op setting. But now I'm able to show her, she's 14, and now she has a part-time job doing something that she loves so much. She loves culinary. She loves desserts, and she works in a gourmet bakery, cinnamon bun, and she works one of her shifts. Yeah. And one of her shifts is on a Wednesday from 9 to 3 when she doesn't have school. She doesn't have classes. So given that sense of entrepreneurship to her and being like, if this is what you want to do, let's see if you like it, because you could be a business owner, right? So that's like, for me, those time bound, that boundary of time is knowing that we don't all have to do everything at once, but we just have to do, I like to say, we have to do 3 things each day really well. And when it comes to even my kids and myself, I like to say, okay, what did I do today as a mom? How did I show up? Give me one thing I did really well. I have to take my own inventory at the end of the day, right? It's between me and him, right? Me and the Lord. Like, I have to say, did I do this well to serve you? Then as a spouse, what did I do really well today? And then as a business owner, how did I show up? So that area for me is so important. And that's what I ask the kids too. What did you do really well? How was your sports? Or What did you do academically? And what did you do to enhance, right? What did you meet a new customer today at work? Or what did you make that was different? So those boundaries in place, that helps us keep those boundaries tight. Okay. Because we're not trying to do everything at once. We're just trying to do something really, really well, 3 things really well.
I love that. I love that because, you want to, as moms, we want to check off boxes, right? And so this allows you to check off just 3 boxes, just as a mom, as a wife, as a business owner, what did you do today? And it also makes you feel like, you did accomplish something. Yeah. And not always feeling like, well, we didn't get to all of the things that were on our list for today. And I think moms do that. Women do that in general. We just have long lists that are unrealistic and unreasonable. And we feel like failures at the end of the day because, we only tacked off, a couple of things that were on that list, or even maybe one thing that was on that list. And we feel like, well, we didn't get to all of that. And so I love that, perception of just doing only 3 things really well for that day and then feeling good about that and moving on, like you said, and so that's really, really cool. And the fact that you're teaching your children that too. And then you mentioned something a while ago, you talked about how your son had anxiety all through school and then you were constantly in hustle mode as well. So COVID was sort of a blessing for you guys because you all took a step back from this like hustle mode. Right. And then your kids expressed about the homeschooling. They wanted to be homeschooled. And so that they were able to like take a collective like breath. Right. Everybody was, the family was. And but it started with you. So that's super cool because had you been in a different mindset when all of that happened and you would have had been stressing over, I can't do this and I can't do that. And you felt, like all of this anxiety about how COVID was like prohibiting you from, reaching your goals and, being in hustle mode. Yeah. The kids probably would have carried that on as well. But because the Lord had already started dealing with you about that stuff, then when COVID happened, you all took a big breath, and so that is amazing to me because God always uses, obviously women and mothers to sort of navigate their family to through things like that. So I love that. And then you said something else. You talked about people over profit, how previously you were just chasing, the money and the reward, the financial reward of what you were doing and missing the people aspect. And yet at the same time, like you were always on, you always wanted to be available, but it was for a different reason. Right. And so when you started putting people first, that changed to where not only were you putting others first, in your business, but you're also putting your family and yourself first, right? So that you were drawing those boundaries and being able to take care of yourself. And I love the unplugging for 24 hours. Yeah. I think we all need to do that, and I'm bad about it too, because the weekends come and you're just sort of like on your phone, zoning out in the car or whatever, we're on your way to go. But I love that you implemented that and taking that Sabbath and that your coach sort of helped you, take on that challenge and say, you know what, take a day off where you're completely unplugged from everything and you're inaccessible and really focus on the Lord and focus on rest and focus on yourself and regrouping. And you're not having this like flood of just information coming at you 24/7.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, it started with me it started with it, just like you said, Daphne, it started with me. The Lord just like convicted me, but now one of my biggest clients, I am part of a company, I'm a consultant for Conversation. And what they do is they bring awareness to families and schools and homeschooling families about the awareness of having conversation over tech use and building of relationships. And I am so passionate about that, about the unplugging because of the of the programming that technology can do to not only me, who I'm 43 years old, but you can imagine to our children who are 14 and 15, right? And their brains are still developing and that intake and stuff. So it is like a new drug. It's like a drug, it really is. Like I want to give a 6-year-old car keys. Like, why would I give my kids access to a full, the World Wide Web and all that stuff, and I'm really passionate about that. But I needed to know that when I put my phone down, this is something that I noticed early in my, I call it like almost a recovery that I was part of, like I needed to recover. Because when you recover, it's a new strength, it's a new mind, it's new, right? So all my behaviors that the Lord was showing me to get rid of, I was learning things in a new way where boundaries had to be built. But I remember maybe it was a Sunday morning. I was sitting in the living room on my chair, like my comfy chair, and my phone was face down on the end table because I turned it off the night before. When I saw my phone, I got hot and sweaty. My heart started going because I couldn't go grab it. I couldn't go look at it because I was trying to be so obedient not to, right? And I'm not saying that everyone has a problem. It was just my problem, right? But it was so drastic being available all the time that when I saw my phone, it was almost like post-traumatic stress. It was so bad. It was so bad.
Yeah. Wow. And the thing is, I think most moms don't realize how much we are addicted to our phones and to technology, because in a way, especially for homeschool moms, that is an outlet outside of the home, right? Like we're connecting with other adults and it makes us feel important, or it makes us feel like, like we can have an adult conversation and not always just with children, especially for moms of like a lot of younger children and stuff like that too. And they're just home and they're, changing diapers and cleaning messes and making snacks and dinner. And they're just all of these tasks. And so a lot of times, like having the phone on nearby and texting friends or, scrolling through social media or watching, like zoning out on TikTok videos, sometimes it puts them in a different frame of mind. And like you said, it is a dopamine shot, right?
Yeah.
I mean, studies have proven that that's exactly what it does to us. Yeah. And there's an addiction aspect to the scrolling. Like they specifically designed it that way so that we don't put it down, and that they can continue to sell to us through ads and, and all of these little, fads that come along on social media. And I think women don't realize that we're addicted to the phones or to the technology. Yeah. And then because of that, we also don't realize that our children are either. Like we're thinking, okay, it's fine if they have, a Kindle and they're watching little, playing little baby games and stuff like that. But when it's all day long, you realize, okay, we have a problem because now they don't know how to like go without it, and, children's reactions to technology being taken away is actually not too much different than an adult's reaction for it to not be. Like you said, you got all hot and sweaty because you realized you couldn't touch it and it gave you like a little bit of like heart palpitations, I mean, but we don't realize that that is actually the effect that it has. And so I love that the Lord led you to draw the boundaries with the technology. So tell us what that looks like now. Like, how do you, I know that you take your Sabbath, but how do you, what does your day-to-day boundaries look like with technology and your time and being accessible 24/7 in your business?
So I sleep with my phone on airplane mode. If I need an alarm clock, I sleep with my phone on airplane mode. And then I control it. And we are in control of our devices and notifications. They don't control us, right? So majority of my notifications, unless it's a text from my husband or my kids, they're silent. Like during the day when I'm working, they're just silent because I'll go down that rabbit hole. I'll pick up my phone and then I'm like, answering a text, then I'm Googling something, then it's 15 minutes already. I just wasted. And I'm like, wait a minute, that's 15 minutes. I could have just walked outside and prayed to the Lord. Right. Like, oh my gosh. Right. So I really tried and control my devices with like the notifications. I don't put my phone on until after I spend time with the Lord in the morning. So it's my Bible devotion. There's no phone time. I don't even use my Bible app because I don't in the morning because I don't want to go down. I know myself.
Too much temptation.
Yeah. Right. I don't even want to do that. So that's for me. I'm not saying everyone's like that. And then, business hours. I started running business hours. And if, my client, I'm clear with my clients that if you message me after 5 or 6, if I check my phone, I might get back to you, but I'll get back to you in the morning. I don't have my phone on in the evening, during dinner time. And then at night, I might check in on social media, but then that's that time really that I'm like, you know what, we're all unplugged. That's our time to regroup as a family, or we're on sports, or we're doing things as a family. But I have to be very conscientious of it, Daphne, because it starts with me. Because I can't tell my kids, like, I'm not saying technology is bad. It's never going away, right? Technology, I'm not saying it's bad, but I can control it, right? Just like boundaries, like you can put them in place, but I can't I have to lead by example with my kids. So they know, my kids know that we unplug. They know my son knows the importance of leaving his phone behind if we're going to go for a walk, like just stuff that I started really doing. And then he and my daughter started following, which is impactful.
Wow. Yeah. So definitely using those focus modes on our phone is important. And then, how do you, as a business owner, because most of women at home, homeschool moms, are making some kind of income online, and they're reaching people through their social media, like they're either their Instagram reels, or they're posting in groups, or they run a Facebook page. How do you say, okay, you need to have business hours, but also limit the time that we're spending on social media? What does that look like for you?
Yeah. Create a content calendar. I think that I love, you can, if you're in a Facebook community, run one, you can schedule your posts, it just, because I have a post that goes off on a Sunday morning doesn't mean I'm available. It's just, that's when I wanted to hit that demographic. Right. Or for example, I did a silly reel last night. I posted about Keurigs, like K-Pots. You don't need a Keurig. They're instant coffee. You just pour it in, right? It was just like, it's a coffee hack. I did that on a Saturday morning. I did that content on a Saturday morning, saved it in my drafts, and I knew I wanted to post it last night, right? So it's just being mindful of getting your tools, your social media tools, and controlling them for when it's going to benefit you, and put those boundaries in place. But you absolutely can run a successful business. And then also too, when it comes to I even had, when I was really working with network marketing, I even had an app where I had an auto reply on I believe it was on my Facebook Messenger. And I would say, currently I'm not unavailable, or you can let people go on red, right? But I'm unavailable. I'll get back to you first thing in the morning. And people respect that when you're like, hey, I'm busy. Nobody understands busy than other moms. Hey, I'm busy, right? Like, it's just communicating. I'm busy. But I used to wear busy as a badge of honor. I was always saying, oh, I'm busy. But now it's like, no, I'm intentional. I'm intentional where I want to direct my time. And then whatever happens, if answering Facebook messages are on my top priority, that's what I'm focusing on that day. But normally, in the evening, that's not my top priority because it's not during my business hours.
Right. I love that. And then when you do go in and focus, you're not looking at like empty messages or waiting for somebody to respond all the time, and like checking like who has responded, who's commented, who's messaged me, right? When you go in, there's like a bunch of things waiting for you to respond to, and you kind of like take care of that, and then you sort of move on with your daily life. I love that. And so thank you, Meghan, for today, for joining us and for talking to us about your boundaries, and telling us a little bit about your journey and how the Lord led you to sort of draw those boundaries and take a step back and take those Sabbaths, take that time. You have more time with your kids now. I mean, I am assuming your husband's much happier with his wife.
Yeah.
And you're happier. Like you're not running yourself ragged and constantly on hustle mode. And I'm sure like your body's responding to a lot of that rest and not having to be on high alert 24/7. And that just does so much for your health. It does so much for your mindset. It does so much for you spiritually. And so I love that you were able to come on today and talk to us about that. That is a huge, huge, huge thing in the homeschool communities with moms, and especially moms in business, because we're trying to do it all, right? And we feel passionate about all these things. Like we feel passionate about the homeschooling, and we feel passionate about our business. And we're also trying to help like our family financial situation or whatever the case might be, right? We have dreams and visions and goals, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I love that the Lord has led you to drawing some boundaries on some of these things, you know, with business hours and your Sabbath, so that you're accomplishing more in a lot less time with a lot less stress, right?
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
Thank you, Meghan, for being on our podcast today. Meghan, where can people find you?
Well,
during business hours.
I just wholeheartedly want to thank you, Daphne, for this platform. And again, you're a voice to homeschooling moms, and I see what you're doing. So I just want to applaud you for all your efforts. So thank you.
Thank you.
And I could be found on Facebook, Meghan DeVito. I do have a website. It's meghandevito.com. And I am on Instagram. However, not as present on there as much, but definitely my website. If anyone's interested in getting a complimentary clarity call, you just click the access to my calendar and set that up. And then we could talk about how to navigate boundaries and starving distractions. So, yeah.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Thank you, Meghan. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Daphne. Bye.